Good evening and welcome to the last Environmental Services Committee meeting of the current administration. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies received.
Okay. Do we have any public questions or statements?
No public questions received.
Any councillor questions or statements?
No councillor questions received.
Can we accept the minutes of the previous meeting as correct? Yeah. Okay. Any declarations of interest? None? Any dispensations?
No dispensations
None.
received.
I'm going to make a chairman's announcement, but I'm going to move that to the last item on the agenda, if you don't mind. So we'll move on to item 8, which is the Environmental Services update.
Thank you very much, Chair. So usually you're treated to my voice for an hour or so. This evening I was going to spare you that to the same degree, and I've brought along Neil, Keith and Mostyn to give you a bit of an update and a review of the last year and a little bit of a throw forward into terms of what we might be doing next year as well. So first up is Neil, so I'm going to hand you over.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening, everyone. It's really good to be here this evening to present to you the crematorium and cemeteries update for the last financial year. Next slide, please. As you're probably aware, the crematorium was closed to the public throughout July and August last year, when the whole of the lower flat roof areas of the crematorium were updated and replaced. This included the roof above the crematory. Now it's fully watertight and in excellent condition, and it has a substantial guarantee on the finish. This slideshow shows various stages of the works, which was carried out by DNN. Next slide, please. During this time, we held the services at the Guildhall here, followed by a direct cremation taking place unattended at the crematorium. Next slide, please. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank again the members of the Guildhall team for their much valued help and support during this time. It all went extremely well, and we had so much positive feedback from funeral directors and families. The cremation figures are still on target for this financial year, even though we were at a reduced capacity during the roof works, so that is good news. Next slide, please. We've just had a total reline of cremator number 1. The works took approximately 2 weeks, but this work was carried out by the FT team who built the cremators, approximately £80,000, but this was in the service agreement, which we are signed up to for 10 years. Next slide, please. I, along with the other qualified cremator technicians, worked extra hours to carry out the cremations through our other cremator. They've also both just had their biannual service, so they're all in very good working order at present. Next slide, please. Last Monday, DNN started work on the crematorium and cemetery fence. You may be aware the original wall failed about 8 or 9 years ago. It will be very good to get this made secure once again, and the crematorium grounds look even more presentable than they already are. Next slide, please. We've also succeeded in making the perimeter hedge to the crematorium ground secure. This was after many attempts to stop people accessing the grounds via cut-through areas, which were then used as shortcuts to school or exercising dogs, etc. Next slide, please. Mary Stanistreet is one of our members of the team, and she is currently doing her in-house CCTS course, which is Crematorium Training Technician Scheme, and is hoping to be doing her exam in the early summer. It was great that Mary was able to see the recent reline of the cremator, as she could then see how they are designed and work. We recently also recruited a new member of the team, Charlotte Shuttleworth, who started on the 20th of February. Charlotte has replaced Hilary Macaulay, who was with us for 15 years. Charlotte is settling in very well and thoroughly enjoys her role at the crematorium. The next slide, please. The Avenue Cemetery will have been open 6 years this October, and since its opening, we have carried out approximately 191 interments there. We continue to get lots of good feedback about the cemetery, and it is starting to look nice and established there now. Next slide, please. Today we had our FBCA, which is the Federation of Burial and Cremation Authorities, spot check inspection. They are the governing body for crematoria across the UK. They're extremely pleased with what they saw at our crematorium and were with us for about 5.5 hours, but all went very well. So is there any questions you'd like to raise, please?
Any questions from councillors? Go ahead, yeah. Cleona.
Thanks, eventually. I'm just interested in what you were saying about recruitment. We've got new people coming in. Interesting that they're both women. I've always considered working in a creme to be a little bit niche. Just sort of interested in what your experiences with recruitment are in general, and is it typical that you usually have ladies involved, or?
I've been in the profession 35 years. Started when I was 2 now, I wish. But it has evolved now where a lot more ladies are there, which is, I think, lovely. And so I'd say it's more ladies than men nowadays, actually. Because obviously they've got a caring, sort of abilities and things. So I think it's more ladies than men. But we just, when we were doing the recruitment with HR, we just had a good feel. And I think, so if it was a gentleman or a lady, we would have, but I think we've done the good choice, or the right choice, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just add to that, when we recruited for the most recent position, I think it was probably about 70-30 in terms of the applicants ratio between male and female. And I think there was one gentleman that was very, very close to the person that we ended up appointing in terms of, the quality of the interview he gave. But Charlotte was just that little bit above.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just asking, just generally interested in recruitment of people down at the creme. Have you ever found it a challenge to recruit people in this sort of sector, or is it normal compared to comparable roles across the council?
Yeah, I think it's when I first took over as manager back in 2009, then Hilary came on board a year or so later, but we had 60 odd applicants for that role. So it is quite a lot of people are quite fascinated with it, and it's, again, I think it's more of a way of life than a job. And so I thoroughly respect my position there, and it's a privilege, and we just do our best for the families and just carrying out their wishes. Thank you.
Sharon.
I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. I've had some concerns raised about the pathways up at the newest cemetery, and you dealt with that really quickly, and the gentleman concerned was really, really thrilled, and so were his family, which was lovely. And also to thank you for coming tonight after 5.5 hours was spot check. I'm pretty sure you must be exhausted, and well done for doing so well today with that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Sven?
Chair, thank you. Good stuff. Neil, always good to see you here doing your thing. Back in the early days of this administration, there was talk about, to reduce our carbon footprint and fuel bills and that sort of stuff. We were talking about resumation, or boiling the bag, as I heard it called. Are there any plans to go down that road? I don't believe it's licensed yet in the UK still, is it? But
No, there was a big, there's been many reports by cremator manufacturers and the government, but it's now, and today I was talking to Paul from the FBCA for about an hour about this, because I brought up exactly the same question, because the co-op were due to have it introduced last year, beginning of the end of the year before, but now they've come to the conclusion that it's not as environmentally friendly. It's the cooling down and the processing of the remains once they've been through the resumation process. So now they're saying that reusable fuel cremation is more environmentally friendly. So they've totally turned it around.
Are there any more questions for Neil? No, I just personally, I think it's a bit of a dilemma that the service which provides the greatest amount of revenue is also the one that has the most negative impact on our carbon footprint, and probably the biggest barrier to getting to net zero for the council. But thank you very much for your report, and look forward to your work continuing in the future.
Can I just add, if anybody hasn't had a look behind the scenes at the crematorium or met the team, I know that Neil would welcome any of the councillors to go up and meet them and to see what goes on. It's not for everybody. I say you've got to be made of stern stuff, but. I think the offer's there, and Neil and the team would welcome anybody that wants to go up and have a look.
So like this last, the last batch was, I think it was about 13,000 for our crematorium, and I divided it into three. It was the British Heart Foundation, Cancer Research, and Cruise Bereavement Care. So they benefit from years ago when I started in this profession, used to just dig big holes and bury them in the grounds, which is ethically nice, but it's not actually doing any good to the environment or to people that are still alive.
Right, thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Keith, would you like to come forward and present your information about CCTV?
Good evening. Can I have the previous slide, please? Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Keith Jackson. I am the CCTV manager for Salisbury City Council. Been in post now for a couple of years. Just a quick overview of CCTV before I go any further. The purpose remains the same. That's enhancing public safety, reducing crime, detecting crime, and supporting our partner agencies such as the police and Wiltshire Council. Currently in Salisbury, we've got 36 PT-set cameras. That's a camera that move around and zoom in and out. We have 21 fixed cameras, most of those in the car parks, Maltings, Colville Street car park, and also now the proud owner of 5 deployable cameras. These are the cameras we can move around at relatively short notice. 2 part-time staff, that's Darren and Andy, with us for many years. Also known them in my previous career. And we have 20 at the moment dedicated volunteers who make up the majority of the hours in CCTV. Recently had the upgrade. Our HIC software has been upgraded, which hopefully will future-proof CCTV for a good many years to come. Next slide, Andy, please. This is some stats for 2023. That's rough looking down here. As you can see, operator sessions, 1,169. It's the highest record since 2018, with 70% of the hours being covered by the volunteers. 334 requested views. That's from the police and other agencies as well, like insurance companies. And 69% of those were used as evidence with positive outcomes. So that's evidence we've recorded on the cameras, downloaded for the police, etc. And it's resulted in some sort of positive outcome through courts or an out-of-court disposal. Just under a couple of thousand entries in our log books. Next slide, please. Again, this is just some stats on the type of entries made in logbooks. These are logbooks we record everything we do in CCTV. So when the operators are there, there's a continuous logbook in front of them, and they're making entries into what they're doing, what they're looking at, etc. And this is where we get our stats from. So again, you can see 2,144 entries in the logbooks. They all say 35 up there, so I'm hoping that is quite right. I've put it on there myself. So that's 35 observed by CTV, again, totaling 35 arrests. And the same from PubWatch and ShopWatch. That's the PubWatch and ShopWatch radio system. So the users calling in CCTV, again, resulting in arrests, likewise for Wiltshire Police. Hours worked, as you can see there, 2020 up to 2023, slight increase in those hours throughout the years. Something I'd like to carry on doing. And the top 5 requested view reasons. Top of there, it's probably no surprise. That's assaults, followed by theft, criminal damage, sort of hand in hand, followed by road collisions and robberies underneath that. Next slide, please. Key points from this particular slide is the increase in hours. Again, that's on the 4-year trend. So since we started to record these figures, our viewing figures, that's people in the control room watching the cameras, has gone up. Next slide, please. This is the top crimes for 2024. Again, assaults, top of the list. Not surprised by that particular statistics, followed by theft. Again, criminal damage, burglary, and public order offences. Requested view requests from the police and other agencies. Again, over the 4 years, that's increased. And the percentage used for cases in court around about the same, between 65 and 69%. And you can see from that, CCTV does play a crucial role in maintaining our public safety and helping law enforcement. Next slide, please. This is a comparison between 2023 and 2024. You can see on the far right there, the changes. It's all gone up apart from the hours worked. Slightly less operators, but those operators are working more hours. Problems and stats there. And again, I'd like to continue that in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. Just some key observations from that. Like I say, the increased hours worked, 150 more hours logged in 2024, continuing our 4-year growth. More requests to view, that's a rise from 334 in 2023 to 408 in 2024. Also representing probably an increase in recorded incidents around the city. Logbook entries increased 2,127 in 2024 compared to 1,848 in 2023. Slight decline in operator sessions, but we know there's been an increase in hours. Again, that's just going back to hours worked by slightly less operators. And the top category of offences hasn't really changed. Assaults, that's probably more in line with the night-time economy on a Friday and Saturday night. Thefts, prominent, especially in market days around the town. Criminal damage in the evenings and other leading offences. Next slide, please. Just a key sort of things of every time I get an email or some sort of communication in relation to good work from the CT operators, I do record it, and that's probably just a snapshot that I've decided to put on the PowerPoint rather than put them all there. But I hope you can see just from reading that we do play a key role in keeping the city safe, and I work together with the police, security around town, ShopWatch, PubWatch. We do get some good results. Next slide, please. ASB wardens. If I can go to the next slide. Just some stats here from the ASB wardens, which has been running now since last June or July, I think it was. up until the end of this month, sadly. If you can see from those stats there, that's the days of the week they're particularly the busiest, and it's probably no surprise towards the end of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and again on Sunday is their busiest time in terms of recording their incidents. Next slide, please. And again, this is incidence time over the month. Again, probably no surprise there if you follow the graph. Up in the summer months, more people out and about, longer nights, slight dip in the autumn time, winter time, and then slightly up again around Christmas, January with the festive season, and then slightly down again in February. Next slide, please. This is, again, just a snapshot of counts versus month by year. And again, probably no great surprise there in terms of the higher the chart around the time of the year. So again, August, September are summer months, and that's when they've been dealing with potentially most of the incidents around the city. Slightly declining in the autumn months, picking up again around December, again the festive time, lots of things going on in the city centre, lots of parties, lots of ASB, and again, certainly early part of January, again, slight decline in February. Next slide, please. This is incident distribution through the months, but basically a heat map. Again, hopefully it speaks for itself. The darker the colours, the busier time, that's in August. Probably the busier month, August to September. Slight decline again through the quieter months, October, November, picking up again slightly in December. Likewise in January, and again just tailing off in February. Next slide, please. Investing in our CCTV. So this is kind of my plan for the next few years. Although we had the upgrade, we did have a few problems from the upgrade. Our video wall wouldn't connect to the new system upgrade because it was old. It's been there since 2017. It's basically just 6 TV screens on one permanently 24/7 for many years. So we had to replace that. Our computer system, we had to upgrade as well to compensate for the new software. That's been done. The problem we have now is the cameras around town. Most of our cameras, which have been up since 2017, they operate on the 5 gigahertz networks. So your home Wi-Fi would probably run on 2.4 or 5. It would start from 2.4. All those licenses were taken up. So most of your home networks now are starting to go on the 5 gigahertz networks. It's the same with mobile phones around town that are on the Wi-Fi. Our system was on the 5 gigahertz network, which is fine back in 2017 because that was the public system. The private system is now encroaching on the public system. So we're all now fighting for the same bandwidth. So a lot of our cameras around town, especially busy periods, market days, Saturdays, Christmas shopping, we had a lot of dropouts. That's because our cameras in town were literally fighting with everybody else on their mobile phones, weather radar systems operating the same network. We can solve this by upgrading our connection issues to 60 gigahertz. The company we use, Smart, they got a license to do this, and it's £1,000 a camera. So my plan initially is for the city centre cameras at Bridges Line, that's the High Street, through the New Canal, Milford Street, all the cameras that are used for city centre, nighttime economy, to probably upgrade them to 60 gigahertz, which would reduce that problem straight away, actually cut out the problem for starters, and then perhaps concentrate on the further cameras away from the city centre. Like I say, we've had the recent upgrade, which is fine, it's working great, but other parts perhaps we didn't incorporate in some or think about have to be upgraded as well, which has now been done. Safer Street funding, I've got 4 mobile cameras. They become mine at the end of this financial year, end of March. So whether I leave them in the parks or move them to somewhere else, I have plans for that, potentially moving a couple to the roundabouts where we've had columns in the past. Additional mobile cameras, potentially purchase a couple more of them because they are easier to move to deal with any sort of ASB areas around the city centre. Volunteer CTV operators, I want to increase them, like get another 10 for the next couple of years. Recruitment is always good every year, but we get sort of 10, 15 people, or maybe 20 people saying they want to do it. But the last course, we only had 4 actually sat down. So that's that gap between advertising for volunteers and getting the right people on the course can be quite challenging at times. And again, increase viewing hours. I like to get more those viewing hours of people actually behind the cameras, looking around the city, keeping it safe. I'd like to increase them even further. And then the next problem we may have as well is upgrading end-of-life cameras. All the cameras around town are getting to the stage now where the last upgrade this year, the firmware cannot be updated after that. It's like having an iPhone. After a particular length of time, you can't upgrade an iPhone. And our cameras around town are starting to come to that end of life now. They'll probably last another year or two, but after that, the firmware, which is our security, will not be able to be upgraded. And also that I'd like to expand the network as well. I'd like to go back to the ring road, get the ring roads covered in roundabouts and potentially areas we've had before, like Waitrose down that particular area, Southampton Road, just extend our network to perhaps pre sort of days when it was owned by Wiltshire Council, if that makes any sense. Well, that's it for me. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that, Keith. Just one question I'm quite interested to know the answer to. Do you have any sort of information or data, anecdotal or otherwise, on the deterrent impact of CCTV? Quite clearly, you've got a very detailed analysis of convictions, reasons for it, spikes in different times of the year. But is there any sort of feedback that you could give on the impact of the service in a positive way before you get to the point where you're sort of looking at prosecution?
That's a very good question. How do you measure what a camera is doing? What's preventing? I don't know the answer to that. It's a difficult one because it's there. It's on people know a camera's there. How do you measure?
Helpful suggestion, because thank you very much. You've put the camera on the town path by the old mill.
That's very well.
Unfortunately, it was a bit late last summer for the peak period, and the weather was rubbish anyway, so there weren't so many people jumping in and out of the river and causing a nuisance. But I should think that would be a measurable impact that you could do at the end of this summer, to see whether how many yobs have been put off causing trouble in that particular very particular
I can certainly
spot.
go to the police. I've got to do a report for the end of Safety Street funding on the mobile cameras had at the various parks. So I certainly will be approaching the police to see if their crime stats have gone down and their ASB records have gone down. So
I
that
would
be
think
one
that would be
measure.
a deterrent, because your photograph, you're able to see people coming along the path before the problem starts there. That seems to me to be quite well situated. So even if you can't pick up their faces when they're actually causing a nuisance in the old mill or in that vicinity, you've got the whole stretch of the town path to try and capture an image as they approach or as they depart, haven't you? It might be a good place to see from the point of view of the deterrent effect.
What, the old mill camera, you mean?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, the old mill camera, that's the summer last year wasn't particularly great. So I don't think the ASB problem was as good, was as high as perhaps people anticipated being. So I'll go and speak to local residents to see if there's been a decrease. But I'll certainly speak to the police and find out if their crime stats have gone down and their calls of ASB for that particular area, as I would do with all the parks.
Well, also, I think it missed the first part of the school holidays, didn't it? Because it wasn't fully operational in that
It was
all
a
of
bit
that
later,
peak
yeah.
period. But with the
We had a problem with the
investment that the
lamppost.
new
The
owners
lamppost
are,
was wrong.
sorry,
The lamppost was wrong because the lamppost should have bent towards the
Yeah.
path so it could be lower to put
Yeah.
the camera on. It wasn't designed for that. Of course, when we looked at it a bit closer, it was run the wrong way. So Wiltshire Council, bless them, come and put it run the right way at their expense.
well, considering the difficulties that the previous owners had and the amount of time and effort and money that the new operators are putting into that pub, I think it's going to be a really reassuring thing for them. We have to keep our fingers crossed. But thanks for sticking it there anyway. That's really good.
Any further questions? Sven?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things, Keith. Request to views. I'm guessing that comes from police, solicitors, and all that sort of stuff. Do we charge for that service now, and what is the income generation from that?
We don't charge.
We don't.
No, we've looked into this for the police. For insurance companies, yes. I charge the insurance company £100 if we download footage for them and send it off.
Okay, what about legal teams, prosecution, defence? Do we get requests from them, or?
Not that I'm aware of. No, the request I get through, if it's basically police, Wiltshire Council or insurance companies. I'm not aware of anybody else asking us for request of view, unless it's members of the public doing a subject access request.
So have we thought about doing that? Or will that have an effect on the evidence that the police and Wiltshire Council request?
So I think that would, so I'll just jump in on that one. I think that would be a decision for the council to take as opposed to officers in terms of that relationship with our partners and whether they have, budgets across everywhere is stretched, isn't it? So that would be a decision really for this council to take probably in the new administration about whether we are going to start charging, our partners to access our images.
Thank you, fair comment. And the second item, we talk about rolling replacement programs for the cameras that we've already got. So when they came in en masse, 64 of them or whatever it was. What's that replacement program look like? Cameras per year, costs of going forward, and how long do we think it will be before we've got to the 64?
Hit cameras, the PTZ cameras around town, the bigger cameras we can actually move, they're about £1,500 to replace at this current cost. I was starting the city centre. We got 36 of those. The fixed ones are the ones in the car parks, the old ones from Wiltshire Council days. You've got the Maltings car park and Coventry car park. I'm not sure if I'd really look into replacing those when they become end of life, because we can probably just get away with a couple of PTZs on each floor. They've got cameras everywhere in those car parks, and I just don't see a necessity to replace every single one when it comes to end of life. I'd rather be looking into the cost of a couple of PTZ cameras on each floor, which will cover the car park just as well.
At what point do you think we'd have replaced the 64 cameras? Replaced sorry. At what point do you think it will take us to replace the 64 cameras that we've got with whatever we decide to replace them with?
Yeah, please.
So again, just because I know what the budgets are, so with this, so Keith has a 10,000, I think it's £10,000 a year budget. Am I right with that? Yeah, for replacement equipment. 15. Sorry, round the wrong way. 15 for replacement kit and 10 for maintenance. So for going forward, what are the key things Keith's going to be doing in the run up to budget bids and savings for this financial year is getting a proper plan together to do exactly what you've described there, which is putting, costing out what it, in a, whether it's a one-er or whether it's a staged, 4 or 5 year plan about how to replace all of those. So yes, he's got £15,000 a year in his budget, so he can get on and do some of it in this new financial year. With probably there'll be a request in budget setting for this forthcoming financial, the subsequent financial year about how we might go about doing that.
Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Mark? Hello? Yes, good. I remember about must have been about 10 to 12 years ago when Ofcom auctioned off a large portion of the frequency bands. And there was a lot of professional organisations who suddenly found themselves with more or less obsolete equipment. And there was I can't remember if it was Ofcom themselves or a government scheme, but to trade in this equipment, which has more or less become obsolete through no fault of these organisations themselves. Just wonder, if we're finding that our cameras are now butting up against that same issue. I assume if there was such a scheme or such a trade-in, you'd be aware of it and taking advantage of it. But is there anything? Is there anything like that can be taken advantage of in this case?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'll certainly look into it. So I can certainly have a look with Ofcom, and I'll speak to smarter contractors. They're probably in a better position to know than I am, but I'll definitely look into it, absolutely.
Any other questions? Just one more question. In terms of reviewing the impact of the cameras, is there a process by which you ascertain when the level of incidents that the camera's picking up, you might redeploy the camera somewhere else if there's a spike in problems elsewhere? Is there a system for that, or is that just a matter of analysing the data?
Is this in relation to deployable cameras and movable cameras? Yeah,
Yeah.
Normally get requests. I mean, it's normally a request from the police if they get ASB in a particular area where it's spiked for some particular reason. They may ask me to move a camera. If I do, I charge them for that. There's a movable fee. It's around about £500 at the moment. So so it's basically forget request from anybody. Police stats. It's got to be backed up. So if the police come to me say we're having particular problems in the park with ASB, can you provide a camera? I'll need some proof, some evidence. It's just that is the case. Canvass the local area if there's any residents, and then consider putting the camera up. Absolutely.
Okay, and presumably the level of staffing will be allocated according to hotspots, which may vary at different points in the year. Is that how it works?
So we're staffing in relation to
In terms of who's actually monitoring the cameras?
I'll jump in there. So we've obviously the team is mainly made up by volunteers, and whilst Keith does his best to get key, say when there's a key football match on or rugby match on of a weekend and we're expecting a spike or something like that, say it's a World Cup final, Keith will ask and to try and get people to cover those particular shifts. But during the sort of the rest of the time, as you can see, this year or this 2024, we've had more hours of people sat in the seats. He's very fortunate, I suppose, in he's got a handful of volunteers who it's almost like they spend more hours than we would during a normal working week, actually volunteering in the CCTV control room. And there are others that sort of dip in and out and give us, the minimum 4 hours a week type thing. But whenever there's either a spike in an area or the police request that maybe the police are doing an operation in town or a specific piece of work, they liaise with Keith and make sure that as much as we possibly can, either our paid operators are in at that specific time or our volunteers step forward and help out. Even when there's an emergency incident, there's a process in place where the volunteers don't mind being, or our staff don't mind being called out in the middle of the night to come and deal with a specific incident. Thankfully, that doesn't happen all that often in Salisbury, but when it does, the team are there ready to go.
They're quite a large group of people, but if it's possible, could you pass on the thanks of this committee to the volunteers, particularly for their time and effort? And unless there are any further questions, thank you. Very, very detailed and I think impressive level of analysis of all that information. So thank you very much, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, Mostyn, would you like to come forward? Is that working?
Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Mostyn Coombs, the Estates Manager for the Council. I oversee the Parks Department, the Street Scene Department, and the Facilities Department. I've only recently just taken on the Street Scene Department in the last few weeks, but I've got an update here. To start things off, I'd like to start with the Parks Department. So next slide, please. So this year has been a good year. We've achieved some good things. One to mention is a sustainable floral display, which was designed and installed by our parks team, which is in the market in Guildhall Square. The plants have now established really well, and we're hoping that this year's display is going to be as fantastic as last year. We've installed some new paths at the Avenue Cemetery. We've installed a tarmac path which leads up to the shelter, and we've also installed a tarmac path which is around the cremation section, which greatly improved it up there. It was, well, most of the paths are kind of loose gravel, but the tarmac is much better and so much more accessible. So it's good. We've used money from S106, which was dedicated for the Avenue Cemetery. We've also installed a new path at Pinewood Way to improve accessibility. It's accessibility to the actual park, so it's from the pavement and runs down to the park. That recently went in. Grass cutting, team did really well this year. They completed 4 grass cutting rounds of all the residential areas, which was an improvement from last year. Tree planting, we planted 323 new trees across the whole of the parish. This was some additional tree planting, some replacement tree planting, and the Urban Tree Challenge Tree Fund planting, which I will talk about shortly. The team have completed the hedge cutting round now, and now moved on to the epicormic growth, which is the growth that grows from the bases of the trees. It's really useful just to go around and just trim that back so tractors and mowers can get around the bases. It's much easier to operate. And we're going to start the new grass cutting season at the end of the month. Moving forward to 25-26, we've got 3 new members of staff joining the team to help enhance the service. We're purchasing a new machine attachment that fits onto our Trimax pedestrian rotavator. This machine will help to gather long grass arising in tight places where a tractor cannot access. Sponsored roundabouts. For many years now, we've used a company called JCB Landscapes to do all of our grass cutting and maintenance on our sponsored roundabouts. This year, the first year, we're bringing that in-house. So sponsored roundabouts, there's 2 small roundabouts at Bishop Down, the Harnham Gyratory and Exeter Street roundabout. And by bringing it in-house, we're going to save £7,000 a year. Next slide, please, Andy. And again, please. So this is the Churchill Gardens. This is the re-landscaping works we did around the toilets and the entrance there. We'd had problems for a number of years where the paving had moved around and people were having accidents and tripping up. Kindly supported us. We moved forward, provided the funding, and we've now replaced that with a tarmac path running through there, grassed areas and tree planting. We've actually planted 60 cherry trees, which is fantastic. Next slide, please, Andy. That's the team putting some of them in. And next slide, please. There's one of the new parts as you're going down towards the toilet block. And again, Andy, looking back towards it where there's new bike racks being installed. And I think it's one more. Looking down into the trees. So the trees are actually now out in blossom. They look fantastic. So I encourage you to, if you're going down there, have a look. And I think it's going to be an amazing display. Next slide, please, Andy. Oh, and one more. Urban Tree Challenge. So SCC was awarded £134,000 from the Forestry Commission Urban Tree Challenge Fund to go towards planting and establishment of 200 broadleaf trees in the city over a 2-year period. 100 trees were planted during year 1 across Hudson's Field, the Friary, Bremerton Heath and Essex Square. As part of this year's funding efforts, a further 100 trees have been planted. And next slide, please, Andy. Kensington Meadow, we planted 14 trees. Next slide, please. Sarum Meadow, 8 trees. Greencroft, 20 trees. Next slide, please. Victoria Park, we planted 50 trees. Wyndham Park, 5 trees. And Churchfields, 3 trees. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. So moving on to street scene. So over this year, the team have been successful with some tractor training. We've tried to encourage training within the team, and we want them to be able to operate all of our equipment. We've got a requirement that they operate the tractor for when we get our dewatering bay. They need to move waste material from the dewatering bay into the skip. So a lot of them have now passed some tractor training, which is great. They've also done some sweeper training. So more staff we can get using the sweepers. We can use more staff and get more sweeping done across the parish. We purchased a chewing gum machine, which was proven very effective for removing gum on the streets. Moving forward into April, we've got 2 new operatives joining the street team, which will be just aimed at focusing on the weeds across the city. UK Health and Security Agency have actually changed the guidelines now on public litter picking in Salisbury. So we can now conduct some volunteer litter picking, which is fantastic news. And we've already had 3 individuals sign up for litter picking, and they're covering Victoria Park area, Castle Road and Ashley Road. So it's really encouraging. We're just about to take on a new van, a Ivoco electric tipper for a 6-year lease. This will be the first electric tipper van which we'll own within our fleet. Technology's taken a little while to catch up on the battery side of things. We've got battery-operated vans, sort of transit-style vans, but this will be the first tipper where we can actually load stuff in the back and tip. And it's got enough power to do so. So we're looking forward to getting that. Our lease expires on our Adex electric road sweeper, and we're now exploring options for replacements. And I just want to say, Tom Simpkins, one of our street scenes managers, is leaving SCC. He's worked for the council now for 6.5 years, and he's actually moving into tourism, and we wish him all the very best for the future. The stats for street scene have been included in the notes, so I won't go over them now, but just to say the team are doing a really good job and keeping the city tidy and clean. Facilities, thank you. So I think Neil talked a little bit there about the crematorium roof. It certainly came with some challenges with the weather, but the contractors did manage to finish on time, and we won't have to do that job again for a long time, which is good. Through our PPM, our pre-planned maintenance over the year, we've improved the condition of some of our pavilions. Bishop Down Pavilion, we installed a new hot water system. We also installed new fascias and soffits and guttering. Portway, the wood on the outside of the building was severely rotted in places, and it's now being replaced with a composite cladding, which is a recycled plastic, which will last much longer than wood. We decorated the Guildhall front offices and the downstairs hallway. And we've also, which is underway at the moment, is conservation work on the historic porch in Bourne Hill Gardens. The porch dates back to the 15th century. It was taken from Salisbury Cathedral and erected in the garden by the owner of Bourne Hill, Henry Wyndham, in 1791. Salisbury City Council was working with DNN and Albion stonemasons to carry out about £21,000 worth of work. The project includes removing rusty iron clamps, reinstating any necessary structural ties, using stainless steel fixings, removing unsuitable previous hard cementous repairs and replacing it with lime mortar, restoring damaged stone surfaces and removing embedded roots. There was a lot of buddleia and ash which were growing in between it. Looking forward to this year, PPM work, we're looking to hopefully do, it's not decided yet, but possibly phase 2 work on the Poultry Cross and the redecoration of the Crown Courtroom. We're currently Hampshire Council doing our procurement for our repairs and maintenance contract. And that is now coming to an end this week. So Mark and I start scoring on Friday. And we'll be looking, to finding a new contractor for the next 5 years, isn't it? We're also looking at doing we're looking to appoint a new contractor to handle our out-of-hours emergencies inquiries like fire alarm activations and other emergencies that occur and require a security guard to investigate. This service will be put in place to support whoever from SCC is on call, which is a new thing we're starting from April. Thank you for your support over the year. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Austin. I've got a couple of questions which I think I'll leave to the next item because they're to do with the long-term impact of some of the changes that have taken place in terms of equipment and so forth. So I'll leave that there. Any questions from any other councillors? Sven.
Thank you, Chair. Like Weetabix, I have 3. So, firstly, I know what a rotivator is, but what's a pedestrian rotivator? It's not something that chops up pedestrians as you're driving.
No, sorry, I've just a pedestrian-operated rotivator, so same as a pedestrian mower, similar size. This is an attachment that can be installed onto it and actually gathers up grass arisings once they're cut. So, for instance, at the River Park, there's some areas where there's long grass and wildflowers which we can't access with a tractor. So this bit of kit will be able to go in there and basically gather the grass a lot quicker.
Okay, second question. Can you go back to where you showed the bicycle racks on down at Churchill Gardens? Oh, there you go. So is there any reason why you put them that way around and not at 90 degrees and on the hard surface? Because that way you get 2 bikes on each without, if you go on the other side now and it's wet and muddy, you're going to get muddy feet.
Well, we were hoping people would use it from the tarmac side. But one of the other reasons was we were trying to avoid people from cutting through the grass and sticking to the path. So they act as quite a good barrier to stop people.
Okay, fair comment. And the third one, so around street scene. So I see the street scene team every day go past my house with all the barrows, and in the afternoon they all come up pushing them up the hill again. It strikes, so it must, I mean, it takes me 10 minutes to walk to the town centre, to here from my house. You know where that is. So it's going to take 15 with a barrow when it's empty going down. And as you're going uphill on the way back, a bit longer. So if you've got 20 minutes each way, that's 40 minutes per operator. 5 operators, that all adds up to time over the week. Is there no way that we can sort of load them onto a van and drop them off in one go so they can spend more time sweeping than they can pushing?
They did used to be based in the by the central toilets previously, and it was before my time. I don't know the decision what it was to move them to.
Yeah, I can answer that. I can answer that one if you like. So yes, they were originally when the service first came in house. We had them based down at the coach station and working out of there. It was more to do with sort of the management of the team. Obviously, the rest of the team are based at Tollgate Road. In terms of being able to provide instruction to the team first thing in the morning and things like that. It was just deemed it was more effective being able for them to be based up at the depot. I guess we could review it again in terms of operational efficiencies and whether we're getting the most out of the team, and that's a fair comment.
Al.
Thank you. The resurfacing work in Churchill Gardens has certainly made Parkrun a lot safer.
Oh, good.
The paving stones around there were getting pretty lethal, and since you have to run around 4 times, 4 times the risk of tripping over, and the way you've angled the bicycle rack certainly discouraged people from cutting the corner off. My only concern, obviously, is there were financial restrictions around the paths. There we go, fantastic. The path leading from the toilet block back into the path is quite narrow, and where Salisbury Parkrun is actually 4 laps, you do tend to get quite a lot of overtaking with the faster runners. I've noticed, and it's been commented to me, that there's runners spilling off the path into the grass, and with the additional tree planting, makes it a bit more of a hazard. So, just a bit wary about that. Obviously, there's nothing we can do now, but I think overall it does make it a lot safer.
Thank you. So we were concerned, and I did take some feedback from Parkrun on the path. Though I couldn't make the path wider, what we did do is we opened up the entrance there much wider than it originally was on the original plan, so hopefully to allow a bit more space for people to turn, so it wasn't such a sharp corner. So some improvements were, hopefully, we did listen to Parkrun and try to overcome that. But I see your point, Alan. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
I have to say I've not taken part since it's been upgraded, so I will give you first-hand evidence once I've done it.
Okay.
Any further questions? Cleona.
Thank you. 2, if I may. What is a chewing gum machine? Is it like a big steam cleaner or a big scraper, or?
No, it's actually quite a small machine. It's like it heats up some liquid and it sits onto the back of the operative. And it basically like a chemical heats up, chemical comes out, and it disperses the oh sorry, I've got such a dry throat. Disperses the gum, and you can remove it.
You haven't had to talk so much in ages.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's been quite effective. They've told me it's they can remove it a lot easier than what they could previously by trying to scrape it off.
Yeah. And does it pick up the gum with it, or do you then brush the gum away?
I think it disperses it, breaks it. The chemical breaks it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with the tendering process for the new contractor, have you got an anticipated date of when you think you'll have made a decision about that?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we've got 2 days put aside for scoring, which is, what day are we on? This coming Friday, and then the following Monday. We've been given an indication so far that we've got 7 or 8 interested contractors. We haven't been given any more details, obviously, at this stage, because we can't prejudge or anything like that. So it'll be shortly after that. So probably the week or 2 after that, we've come to a final decision, and then started engaging with the preferred contractor, with the contract then starting on the 1st of July of this year. So not long.
Where Hampshire have sort of had their involvement at this stage of your scoring process, are you meeting them or is it based on sort of desktop exercises?
No, so we'll be meeting them. Well,
Okay.
the Hampshire Council representatives will be coming to us with all of the information, and we'll be locked in a dark room for Friday and Monday, scoring. Maybe allowed out for a bit of lunch if we're lucky, and then yeah, we'll basically we'll be, because there's a lot of regulation around procurement, and even more so that has just been brought in terms of also monitoring contracts once you've awarded them. And the legislation's changed quite significantly, which is why we've gone out and got some assistance with this. And we're looking at further assistance potentially going forward as well. But for this particular contract, yeah, we're working with Hampshire, and they're guiding us through the process and making sure that we're doing everything legally and above board and not getting anything wrong.
Are we paying a fee to Hampshire for this?
We are.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Just one general question, Mostyn. I know over the last 12 months or so, we've been working on recruitment, and there was the transition period where we had a dip in staffing levels. Without asking for too much data, what's your feeling generally about meeting the demand in terms of keeping our schedules going and public requests? Do you feel that's more manageable now? Are we a few people short still? Roughly, how does that feel?
With the parks team, with the extra fee people, I think we may not see, I don't think we're going to see like an enhanced in terms of getting around a whole nother round potentially, but what we will see is much more efficient staff members being able to cover people when they're sick or annual leave. So I think we'll see definitely see an enhanced service across the board. And obviously we've got the street scene as well. We've got the 2 new members who are joining for the weeding. We've already got a round schedule which we use for weeding and for the sweeper work. So having those extra 2 people there contributing to that should make a good, I feel confident it'll make a good difference. Yeah.
Good, that's good news. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you very much, Mostyn, for you, and thank your team on behalf of this committee.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, sorry guys, but it's back to me again. My dulcet tones. So some of this information will not be, it's hopefully familiar to you. Some of it is a bit of a repeat, but I wanted to just remind people of what we have achieved as a council, and what my teams have achieved over the last few years in terms of the Environmental Policy Action Plan. So next slide, please, Andy. So the Environment Management System, so we achieved the British Standard 855 2016, which allows organisations to implement and maintain an environmental management system using a step-by-step approach. So we achieved that, which is really, really positive. Next slide, please. In terms of community engagement, so we continue to support people in the park, which is an opportunity for the community to learn from each other, exchange ideas and generate plans, etc. I'm sure that many of the councillors around this table have attended that event and worked with those people who organised that as well. Since 2020, volunteers have worked with the City Council to plant over 3,000 mixed native hedging whips in Salisbury's green spaces. So again, we're not just doing the work ourselves, we're working with the community to enhance the spaces which they work in and live. And schools were leafleted and publicity to raise awareness of environmental impact, i.e. air quality related to the school run. And Councillor Wells and Councillor Hocking were involved with pushing that forward as part of the Wiltshire Council Environmental Group. Next slide, please. So we supported the Eco Hub, who offer education, information and raise awareness on the market most Saturdays, or that might have changed to Tuesdays more recently, but certainly market days, they are out there. I saw them recently with their leaflets encouraging people to think about what they do in their day-to-day lives and things that they can make small differences in. We supported the Green Business Association to encourage local businesses to go green, and there's lots of organisations around the city that are proudly with the signage in the window showing what they've done. We continue to work with the F3 Garden Project, who supply freshly grown food to the pantry, a fantastic, again, charity that is working with the council to help those people that need it the most. Next slide, please. In terms of recycling and city-generated waste, so in 2021, only 2 of the City Council's bins were dual recycling general waste bins. I think there was 1 out here on the square and there was 1 up at Hudson's Field. Since then, here we are in 2025, and we now have just over 300 bins across the city, with 83 of those, or just coming up to a third, being the dual recycling general waste bins. So, and that number does continue to grow each year, and this is really helping people make the right decisions. As we move into the new financial year and move into the new committee structure, I'll be bringing along sort of more recycling stats, so you can see exactly what what those bins are delivering for us. As you can see, the first phase of bins were targeted in the city centre, with the second phase in play parks and at bus stops. And as we move out, all the bins across the parish are going to eventually be those dual recycling bins. We will also be tendering our waste and recycling contract at the end of this year, with a view to increasing our recycling rates, particularly on our market, which is probably the place where we need to focus our attention the most. Is probably where we do our least recycling at the moment. In terms of our travel action plan, this committee adopted the plan. We worked with Sustrans to produce the plan for staff, councillors and volunteers. At the moment, that plan, since it was adopted, I have to admit, has sat firmly on the shelf. But as we move into the new financial year, I will be looking to implement some of those recommendations as set out on the screen there. And the team will be working to deliver as many of those over the next 4 or 5 years. Next slide, please. In terms of our carbon footprint and energy supplies, so the SCC's emissions for 21-22 at the beginning of this administration was 427 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. The emissions decreased from the baseline year of 29-20 by 15.2%. The next audit is due this year, and we plan to do that in the new financial year. SEC uses 100% green tariffs for both electricity and gas across all of our sites. And from April 24, so last year, we began working with Inspired PLC to provide information on monthly consumption in every council building, so targeted intervention can eventually be implemented. On the next slide, it shows you a graph. So this is I think this is for the Guildhall. So this is eventually we'll get a 2-year comparison. This is year 1 data, which shows, unsurprisingly, that the actually this might be the I should have put on there what it is. Actually, this might well be the crematorium. Sorry, not the Guildhall, because there was a slight dip in July and August by the looks of it, which is when we were closed for the refurbishment of the roof works. But you can see, we'll be able to see what the comparison is in terms of these sites, and then come up with some hopefully some improvements. And we can actually, I think Councillor Wells was asking some questions about data for some of our other services, and with this we'll actually be able to directly see what our interventions are doing in terms of reducing our energy consumption across individual buildings across the council going forward. Next slide, please. Back in 22, we did energy audits of our lighting across our estate and put a plan in place to upgrade to LEDs across all of our buildings. Every building has now been converted to LEDs, with the exception of this building in the Crown Court, which is being upgraded this spring. So that's in the 7th of April, I believe. The works are scheduled to go in there to change those lights. And then the Oak Court, we've done the easy sort of hanging through to the spotlights just around the edge, but the part in the middle, again, it's quite a big job. I don't think we'll replace the chandeliers in here. They look like they've been here a while. We might let those remain. Now, whilst we're managing reducing our energy consumption, which is fantastic for the environment, it's also fantastic for the council's coffers. So it's part of the cost improvement plan that our CEO has put in place. What I can offer up for the new financial year is £30,000 of savings on our electricity bill as a result of putting these LEDs in. So, you know, it's not just a good thing to do in terms of the environment. It is actually really good for the council's accounts as well. If we move on to efficient design, so as always, any refurbishment works are used as an opportunity to increase efficiency as well as the aesthetics of the building. I think we've talked about this before, but at Fisherton Rec, the public conveniences are going to be opened imminently. The hand wash units inside, instead of traditional taps, they dispense, you know, sufficient water to wash your hands and then shut off to become the dryer, etc. The toilets work on infrared. All the lighting is LED, and it's got a living roof as well. So, you know, really top-notch facilities to go with. Well, hopefully this summer, a top-notch River Park scheme as well. In terms of vehicles and equipment, so the City Council at the moment has 21 van sweepers on the road, which are split between the events, markets team, street scene and grounds. We will have 22 vehicles shortly because we need the additional one as part of the increased street scene team that this council agreed to as part of our tackle on weeds. As Mostyn mentioned earlier, that is going to be another EV vehicle. So it'll be 8 of, on here it says 7 of the vehicles, but 8 of those vehicles are going to be electric, with 1 being hybrid. EV charging points were installed as part of the Tollgate Road development works. And again, for any councillors that haven't been to Tollgate Road and had a little nose around the depot, you are more than welcome. And although I didn't say it when Keith was here, I know he would be more than welcome to welcome any of you into the CCTV control room, one at a time, because it is a box, but you know, if you want to book in and pop in at some point to see what happens there, you'd be more than welcome. Battery power tools has replaced petrol where possible, and an electric mower was purchased, which is used at the crematorium to keep noise levels at an absolute minimum. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, there we go. Fisherton Wildlife Meadow. So this is a project that started a couple of years ago. It was a grazing paddock. We took it off the books and turned it into a wildlife meadow. Worked with lots of local residents up there. They've all been involved, helping creating a nature reserve. They worked with the Parks Office again, planted 18 metres of native hedging. I can never say this properly, but a herbernaculum, have I got that right, for amphibians and reptiles. They've created one of those. We've got a new pond, lots of trees have been planted up there again that Mostyn showed you some photos of earlier. And then our tree and ecosystem strategy. So this is actually out of date, really. We've got more than 13,000 trees now. We've upped the ante over the last couple of years. So as this council will remember, in 2022, it was agreed that £20 from every full cremation would be put towards additional tree planting in the city as a way of offsetting at least some of the emissions. In June 23, the tree and ecosystem strategy was finalised, which provided the council with a target of increasing the tree canopy coverage across the city. And the strategy provided the information and foundation for the council to apply for the funding that Mostyn mentioned in those couple of hundred trees that have gone in over the last 2 years. As you will see, the number of trees from 2020 up to this year, the increase has been, you know, really quite significant. We've gone from 43 in 2020, 19 in 21, 87 in 22, and then 332 in 23, and 323 in 24. Now, I think even if you knock back off of the Urban Tree Challenge fund, which has obviously contributed 100 to each of those final 2 years, we're still planting over 200 trees a year across this city now, and that will continue until this, you know, whichever administration is in post changes their mind, because the funding from the crematorium now allows us to have that certainty that we can continue planting trees across our green spaces and increasing that tree canopy cover to, well, just make offset some of the, you know, hotter summers that we're almost certainly likely to get. And that is a whistle-stop tour, really, of all of the wonderful things I think that this my team has achieved over the last 4 years. Thank you to all councillors that have worked with my team I think we've delivered some really good things for this city, and I look forward to working with any of you that are crazy enough to put yourselves forward for another few years of pain over the after the May elections.
Thank you, Mark. Obviously, one or two people have questions. Annie.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, have we now used up the Urban Tree Challenge Fund? That's it now?
So we've used up all of the money to plant new trees, but as part of the funds, we get for the next subsequent 3 years after this, I think, we get funds to keep watering them. Because that costs nearly as much as planting the trees to actually make sure that they stay alive. So that I think for the next 2 or 3 years, I'd have to look at the facts and figures, but I think we've got another £30,000 for the next 2 or 3 years.
Sharon.
That was kind of going to be my question, because at Hudson's Field, Victoria Park, amazing new trees gone in there. They look fantastic. But we've got the history of the dying tree situation.
Yeah,
is that the big challenge, the watering?
No, we're not. Do you know what? We've actually got a really, really good track record of keeping trees alive. That I think we had a bad batch that particular year, those beech trees. And because obviously whenever you plant a number of trees together, it's very visible when they fail. And I really do think we were just unfortunate with those ones, because it was those ones and also some of the ones along Hudson's Field as well failed. So I think we just had a particularly unlucky batch that year. But if you look at all the ones we planted last year up at Essex Square, Bemington Heath, no issues at all. So watering is, we've got a good regime. We know what we're doing. I think we were just unlucky.
Any other questions? Sven.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. All good stuff. At what point do we run out of space to plant more trees?
Fantastic question.
Yeah.
Fantastic question. So that is actually one of the things. So we've got a new parks officer that started last week. Her name's Grace. And one of the first conversations I had with her was over the course of this next year, I would like you to tell me how many more trees we can actually plant on our parks and open spaces and across the city, bearing in mind there'll be some places which are unsuitable when you look at where the like for example, we planted quite a lot of trees up at Greencroft. Even though there's more open space at Greencroft, if you look at the plans of where all of the utilities run, I don't think Greencroft can really take too many more trees, as an example. So we will. So the plan is we'll get Grace to have a look at this over the forthcoming year and work out, over the coming years, is there room to plant another 5,000 trees or another 500 trees? And I would hope to come back with a bit of a plan.
Al.
Thanks, Mark. Just a quick question for you. How much of the water you're using for the trees is captured rainwater?
So none of it at the moment. We did at our old depot. We had up in Harnham. We had a what did we have? We had a water harvester for rain runoff. We haven't got one at the new depot at the moment. That is something we're looking at. It was something we couldn't quite fit in with the outside space. However, we do have a license to take water from the river. So we're not, in most cases, we're not using it from the tap.
Great, thanks.
On the issue of Sven's question about where have you got room for any more trees? The tree strategy that we've got does say that we should have that percentage of tree cover across all wards. And obviously some wards that's going to be more difficult to achieve than others.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to know how that balance is being achieved. And also the other question I'd have is about compensating with planting for the effects of things like ash dieback in our woodlands, because presumably there is an opportunity to introduce some more diversity in the types of trees within those spaces as well.
Absolutely. So in our woodlands, what we don't tend to plant standards, which are the more established trees. In our woodlands, we tend to work with volunteers to plant whips. in amongst that when we have ash trees, particularly that have died or failed. But absolutely, yes, we can look to put in more a variety of species. In terms of, you're absolutely right, in some wards it is more challenging, and that's where Grace is going to be looking at over the next 12 months exactly where we can plant more trees. As I say, looking at where the utilities are, working with residents. I'm thinking up in your ward up in Harnham on what's the name of the area? My brain's gone. But there was an area up there where we planted some trees. I think it was either last year or the year before, and there was the residents didn't want it on one side of the hedge. But when we had a conversation, they were happy with the other side.
Oh, was that a Parsonage Green?
That's the one, yes.
Yeah.
So again, there'll be some areas that are suitable for tree planting, but of course, residents don't want them. We're not going to, we need to work with the community to make sure that they're in places that they want to have more trees.
Yeah, yeah. I had another question, but it's gone out of my head now. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Any questions? I've got a couple myself, Mark. The first one relates to the tenders for contract for recycling. I went along to the Academy Group Council earlier in the year, and they had a presentation from one of the recycling companies, which was fantastic in terms of educating young people into not just the benefits of recycling, but the most effective ways of doing it. What I'm coming to is the point that when you are looking at tenders, are you going to include a factor which will involve the provider offering some education to the public about how to recycle and what to recycle? Because I understand from the presentation that I saw that inappropriate recycling of materials causes huge damage and other sort of environmental issues by people putting the wrong stuff in the wrong place. For example, I think there's one sort of issue with drinks bottles not being empty. They can't be actually recycled. They're sort of getting in the way and sort of slowing the whole process down. So I think that is to do with public information and educating the population. I think it would be really good if they took that responsibility and actually fed back as part of their service to the council on the level of recycling and how effective that's been. Is that a possibility?
So it wasn't on my list, but it will be now.
Okay. The other thing, another question which I'm not quite sure you've covered it in the past, is you've done a lot of work in looking at water consumption and gas and other energy sources being reduced. Is there an overall scheme for looking at insulation of all our buildings?
Yeah, so this is, again, in the forthcoming year, this is something that I want to work on with Mostyn in terms of coming up with a decarbonisation programme for our buildings, which is, insulation, it will be heat pumps, all of those type of things. So, but we need to, without a plan, a bit like the tree and ecosystem strategy, if you haven't got a plan, it's all a bit piecemeal. So we've done some of the low-hanging fruit, which is the LEDs. This is fairly straightforward to do. We all know that that's going to make a difference. Going forward, we need to come up with a plan of what we're going to do and where and what's possible. So for a grade 2 listed building like this, the possibilities might be X, whereas, for up at the depot, which is a commercial building, the opportunities might be Y. But until we've got that explored that and got a costed plan of what that actually entails, we won't quite know. But yeah, for the new financial year, that is high on my list of things to do.
Thank you. Any further questions, Annie?
Sorry, just one more, Mark. I remembered what it was I wanted to ask you about, and it was roadside trees. You were saying that it's a lot harder, obviously in some wards than others, to up the level of tree cover. Obviously, roadside trees, I think they're normally Wiltshire Council, aren't they?
That's right. So 9 times out of 10, highway trees does fall under Wiltshire Council. So we don't have the even if we wanted to plant there, we can't.
We're not allowed to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask, because that would be the obvious way to improve
Yeah,
the biodiversity of some of those more urban areas, wouldn't it?
yeah, it's not within our gift to do that.
Okay, thank you.
We've taken on the maintenance responsibilities for many of Wiltshire Council's assets, but that is not one of them.
Okay, thanks.
And in relation to that, Annie, I know that there was, I've forgotten that fantastic word for describing the growth around the base of trees.
Epicorbic.
Anyway, I contacted Wiltshire Council about a particular, or a resident contacted me about a particular tree, but when I contacted them, asked, could you do the rest of the road? And they did. They went right along Stratford Road and cleared all of that because it was growing over the pavements, and it was actually, so the response in my experience from Wiltshire Council in that respect was very good indeed. Sven.
Sorry, one thing I should have mentioned, I omitted to mark. So putting my flood coordinator, flood warden hat on. So I'm having conversations with the Environment Agency at the moment about the amount of water that is being held back into Salisbury generally through the way that the sluices and hatches are operated further downstream from, for argument's sake, from Britford, so from Newbridge down that way. But there is also a contributing factor with the amount of trees that are down and in the rivers at the moment, which is also having an effect of holding water back in the system. I'm thinking specifically at Churchfields, at Ashley Road and up by the boardwalk, but also along the Churchill Gardens Park, along there. So we have trees down in the river, absolutely everywhere. Do we have any plans to start pulling some of these out, or are we just going to, what's the plan there? Because the work I'm doing with the Environment Agency, what I don't want to happen is for no one to do anything. And we've seen recently when we get a bit of rain over the weekend, we've had no rain, we get no rain for a month, then we have a couple of days rain over the weekend, the river levels rise 2 feet. They're in our parks. Yeah, our car park gets flooded on a regular basis. That's because all the water that goes through Britford is currently diverted through the old river down past our park. So, are there any plans to remove some of these trees that's holding the water back, or where are we with that?
Again, I don't know the specifics for those particular trees. If you can ping me some locations of where you've identified where there are trees down, going into the new financial year, we've got obviously this council has increased our budgets, so we can certainly have a look at that if that is what's causing some of the or contributing to some of the water being held in Salisbury. We can definitely have a look at that.
Because I've also, on the similar vein, I've also had comments from members of the public who are saying, "Where's our river gone?" Yeah, we can't see it anymore because it's just, there's down trees absolutely everywhere. So I'll go around Churchill Gardens when I get a chance, and I'll send you some pictures so you know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, please do.
Thank
More
you.
than happy to have a look.
And following on from that, Sven, I came across a resident in Stratford Subcastle who described an issue with a local landowner, and I can't recall the device or whatever it was that they were controlling, but they were not cooperating, and that was contributing to flooding in the village. And is it a culvert? Yeah, anyway, they weren't playing ball basically and operating it in a way that would negate some of the flooding in Stratford Subcastle. I don't know what we do about that. Maybe if I could find out who the landowner was, I could pass that on to you, Mark, and maybe approach them to see if you can only appeal for greater cooperation because it's on their land, but it's definitely an issue as far as some of the residents are concerned. I've got one more thing to say, my announcement that I was saving for the end.
There's still budget monitoring.
Sorry.
Don't forget budget monitoring.
Just the budget.
Very important stuff.
Yeah.
I won't go through the paper too much because it's very similar to what you've already received at full council. You would have seen this. Thank you to Councillor Riddle, who has identified there is one error on here, which is on the final page, crematorium income. It's showing that we have overachieved by 5%, so that the number is in red and in brackets. That's incorrect. We've underachieved at this time by 5%, so we're £44,321 behind where we would want to be. But that does continue to come down month on month, and as Neil pointed out earlier, we are confident that we are going to either just about hit our target, or maybe even just exceed it, which is a fantastic achievement given the fact that the crematorium was pretty much closed for 2 months. Happy to take any questions though in terms of the budget monitoring report. As I say, most of it is repeated from full council, so there shouldn't be any surprises in there. But if there's anything that anybody would like to ask, I'm more than happy to take questions.
No questions? Okay, so my chairman's announcement, I don't think I've ever made a chairman's announcement because everything's so well covered in the meetings, but I just want to say to you, Mark, something on a personal basis, which is you came into this position round about the time I became chair of the committee. And what I would like to say, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
For two main reasons. One, your professionalism, and secondly, your commitment to try to address environmental issues without compromising the service, which is not an easy thing to do. And you've had to deal with all kinds of issues around moving into the depot, transferring over workers to a different contract. It's been a very difficult journey, and you've held that sort of level of professionalism commitment right through to the end. So congratulations on that. And hopefully I'll be working with you next year, but you never know.
Well, like I said, I thank you very much to you and to everybody else. Look forward to seeing all of you or some of you on the other side, whoever decides to run again. Thank you very much.
Right. In that case, unless anyone's anything further to say, meeting closed.